You remember when firing up a Harley felt like waking up a living thing. The bars shook, the pipes growled, and the road answered back. The Fat Boy used to give us that. But somewhere between the Evo roar and the Milwaukee-Eight shine, the feel faded. The solid discs, the big rear tire, the movie fame. They made it a symbol, not a soulmate. Old-timers say it still looks the part but doesn't talk back through the bars. Tonight we're digging into how Harley's proudest machine turned from road rebel to showroom statue, and what that says about the soul of American steel. The icon riders. Quietly avoid. There are names in Harley's lineup that carry weight, names that sound like history itself rumbling through the chrome. The Fat Boy is one of them. It rode into pop culture on the back of fame, flashed across movie screens, and sat front and center in showrooms for decades. It should have been untouchable, a machine that stood for Harley pride, torque, and tradition. But when you walk into most dealerships today, you notice something strange. Riders glance at it, nod, and keep walking. The parking lot tells a quiet truth. The Fat Boy doesn't draw a crowd like it used to. Among Harley veterans, the talk isn't loud or angry. It's something colder. Disappointment. On rider forums and garage meetups, you hear the same phrase. It looks like a Harley, it sounds like a Harley, but it doesn't ride like one. That's not hatred, that's heartbreak. Because for riders who measure miles in decades, the feel of a bike means more than any spec sheet. The Fat Boy still turns heads, but for many it doesn't stir the gut. If you've spent decades in the saddle, you can sense when a motorcycle's soul feels off. The Fat Boy's issue isn't that it's slow or weak, it's that it lost that raw connection between man and machine. It's a beautiful stranger wearing a familiar patch. And somewhere deep down, every old-school rider knows it. The clues are hidden right in its design, where style fights physics. The first sign of trouble sits right in plain sight. Those polished, solid disc wheels and that massive 240mm rear tire look like a sculptor's dream. They scream attitude, muscle, and presence. Parked under sunlight, the bike looks like it could crush concrete. But out on the road, style starts arguing with physics, and physics always wins. Riders have long complained about how the Fat Boy dances with the wind. Those solid wheels might look mean, but they act like sails when the crosswinds hit. On long stretches of open highway, a sudden gust can push the front end just enough to make your heart skip. Add in road camber or uneven pavement and the bike begins to wander. Some describe it like wrestling a loaded semi that refuses to stay in its lane. It's not terrifying, but it's tiring. Every minor correction wears on your wrists and mind over time. Harley engineers built the Fat Boy for presence first, not precision. That wide rear tire gives it a planted look in photos but resists subtle steering inputs. The front end has to fight to realign the bike in a curve. On paper, it's balance and beauty. In practice, it's tension. For the average rider, that's the difference between cruising and working. And for the man who's ridden 10 states in one season, working is not what he came for. But what happens when you leave the straight highway? If you've ever owned a Harley or dreamed of one sitting in your garage, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Tell us your experience with the Fat Boy, good or bad. Real stories from real riders matter here. The corners that push back. A Harley isn't supposed to feel fragile, but it's not supposed to fight you either. Yet the Fat Boy's geometry does exactly that. The low seat, wide bars, and heavy front end create a strange combination. Comfortable to sit on, demanding to steer. The moment you roll into a corner, it feels like the bike is asking if you're sure. For riders with shorter inseams, the stretched reach can twist your hips. For those with older backs, it starts to ache before the tank runs dry. That famous wide tire loves straight lines but hates quick transitions. Try leaning it through a tight intersection or a twisty county road and you feel the resistance, like dragging a boot through wet asphalt. Riders used to compare it with the Heritage or even the Breakout, and most will tell you this one takes muscle, not rhythm. It's not that it can't handle, it just makes you earn every curve. You feel it in your shoulders before the first gas stop. It's the kind of fatigue that sneaks up, not from fear, but from constant correction. For riders who once carved highways with ease, that's not a small thing. It changes how far you ride, how often you ride, and sometimes whether you ride at all. The Fat Boy looks like freedom, but it doesn't flow like it. And that strain doesn't end when you hit the brakes. If you're still out there riding for real, not just for looks, hit the description. The gear and accessories we trust are linked below. The breaking faith problem. A machine this heavy, nearly 700 pounds wet, should inspire confidence when you grab the lever. Yet the Fat Boy's single front disc setup has been the source of debate for years. Riders respect Harley's commitment to the classic look, but one rotor on that much metal makes even seasoned bikers uneasy. It stops fine in town, but when traffic compresses on the highway or a deer darts out at 55, fine isn't what you want. Braking isn't just numbers, it's trust. You can feel when a machine gives you full authority or when it hesitates before helping. The Fat Boy's front end tells the truth through the lever. A soft, delayed bite, a moment's pause before the grip. Add a passenger or luggage, and that hesitation grows. Harley did include modern ABS, but it can't hide the fact that there's only so much surface area working for you up front. For riders who faced real emergencies, those who felt tires lock and metal slide, that single-disc setup feels like a gamble. You learn to ride with distance, to predict danger before it happens, to rely more on instinct than equipment. And for many, that breaks the bond between rider and bike, because when you swing a leg over a Harley, you're trusting it with more than your money, you're trusting it with your skin. But this bike's real issue isn't metal, it's meaning. Losing the lineage. There was a time when the Fat Boy was more than a name. It was a badge of rebellion that came from real steel and real sweat. The early Evo-era Fat Boy carried a kind of authority only Harley could build. It had weight, but it also had meaning. The balance between style and substance was perfect for its time. Riders from the 90s still remember the feel of that machine, steady, raw, and alive beneath them. When you hit the ignition, it felt like a handshake with a living thing. But as the years rolled forward, Harley changed more than engines. They began shaping bikes for showroom light, not roadside grit. The modern Fat Boy inherited the look but not the lineage. The wide tank badges and gleaming chrome said heritage, yet the ride said something else. The weight distribution changed, the feel changed, and for many the spirit changed with it. Veteran riders started calling it a prop. Beautiful, but hollow. The older crowd didn't hate it because it was modern. They hated that it pretended to be old. What once stood for freedom now looked like a costume of what freedom used to be. Harley tried to update a legend but ended up rewriting its DNA. Every bolt still looked familiar, yet the soul had shifted, and the story behind its name didn't help. The myth that misfired. Every motorcycle earns a story, but few get one as strange as the Fat Boy. For years, people whispered about its name, claiming it was born from Fat Man and Little Boy. The two atomic bombs dropped in World War II. The rumor spread faster than any marketing campaign, especially among younger riders searching for symbolism. Some saw it as dark humor, others as defiance, but the truth was far simpler and far less dramatic. Willie G. Davidson never meant to tie the bike to war. The name came from the shape, a squat, muscular silhouette that looked like raw American power. The goal was intimidation, not irony. Yet once the story spread, it took on a life of its own. The Fat Boy suddenly carried an unearned sense of controversy. It became the outlaw's Harley, not by design, but by misunderstanding. That myth twisted perception. Some buyers loved it for the wrong reasons. Others avoided it entirely. The name became heavier than the metal. Harley could never fully correct it without sounding defensive, so the company leaned into silence. Over time, the false legend attached itself to the model's identity like a permanent tattoo. Even riders who knew better still called it the bomb bike, half joking, half serious. It's ironic that a name meant to celebrate strength became a burden of confusion. In chasing attitude, Harley stumbled into a myth they couldn't control. Then Harley tried to rebuild that image, the rebuild cycle. Harley knew the Fat Boy had lost its spark. The company poured years of engineering into redemption, New frames, smoother engines, better balance. The 2018 Softail redesign promised salvation. A lighter frame, improved rigidity, and a Milwaukee-Eight power plant that could outpull nearly anything in its class. On paper, the math checked out. Lighter by nearly 30 pounds, stronger through the mid-range, more refined overall. But when the test rides began, the verdict was déjà vu. Riders admitted the bike looked stunning and the torque curve felt strong, yet the geometry still fought the human body. It cornered reluctantly, braked cautiously, and carried itself like an old prizefighter refusing to retire. Harley had built a better version of the same problem. The mechanical fixes couldn't reach the emotional disconnect. Dealers noticed a strange trend. First-time Harley buyers praised the new Fat Boy, while longtime owners traded theirs in early. The divide wasn't about speed or specs, it was about feel. Harley had tried to modernize an heirloom without asking what made it sacred. For some, it was progress. For others, it was betrayal. Every few years, the brand promised the most balanced Fat Boy ever. And every few years, riders shook their heads and said, "Still doesn't ride like it should." It became a cycle of hope, of hype, of disappointment repeating in chrome. And pop culture fame trapped it even tighter. When fame becomes a cage, no other Harley carries the kind of pop culture baggage that the Fat Boy does. The moment Arnold Schwarzenegger kicked it into gear in Terminator 2, the bike became immortal. That slow roll out of the bar, the shotgun cock, the glare, that single movie scene did more for Harley's image than 100 ad campaigns. Overnight, the Fat Boy became the face of American cool. But fame is a tricky thing. The silhouette that once made the bike famous also froze it in time. Every redesign after that moment was haunted by Hollywood. Fans expected it to look exactly like the movie bike. Same fat forks, same solid wheels, same stance. Engineers couldn't evolve the shape without risking outrage. The company's own success handcuffed its creativity. You probably remember that silver screen moment. It made the Fat Boy every man's dream bike, even for those who had never ridden. But the reality is that fame turned it from a living machine into a museum piece. It was no longer allowed to grow or adapt, it just had to stay iconic. The younger crowd saw a movie prop, not a motorcycle. The older crowd saw a memory frozen in place. In trying to preserve an image, Harley trapped itself in it. What once symbolized freedom now represented nostalgia under glass. The Fat Boy couldn't evolve because it was too famous to change, but on the open road, fame doesn't keep you upright. The ride that fights back. There's a strange contradiction buried inside the Fat Boy's frame. On the highway, it feels like a tank forged for the open road. The torque hits early, the exhaust note rolls deep, and for the first few miles, pride swells in your chest. The bike has presence. Cars move aside, strangers look twice, and you feel that old Harley magic for a moment, the sense that you're riding something built to dominate. But as the miles stretch, that feeling changes. In traffic or tight corners, the same mass that made it powerful turns it into work. The steering feels deliberate, almost stubborn. Each curve asks for muscle instead of grace. On winding roads, it's not the machine that follows your rhythm, it's you forcing it into yours. For some riders, that makes it thrilling. For others, it's a reminder that the name Fat Boy isn't just branding, it's physics. The bike demands respect, and it rarely gives it back. Push too hard, and you'll feel it push right back at you. Straight-line thunder transforms into cornering anxiety. Even experienced riders find themselves adjusting expectations, shifting weight, and planning every turn like a tactical move. It's the kind of motorcycle that looks like a reward but rides like a reminder. Not every Harley is built for ease. Some are built just to make a statement, and once you try its cousin, the truth hits even harder. The Breakout contrast. It's almost unfair how much one bike can expose another. Take the Breakout, Harley's sleeker, stretched-out sibling. On paper, they share bloodlines, same Milwaukee-Eight heart, similar torque curve, and a shared badge of Harley lineage. But in practice, the Breakout reveals what the Fat Boy refuses to admit. The geometry, not the engine, defines the ride. Riders who've swapped between them say it immediately. The Breakout leans smoother, turns cleaner, and feels lighter even when the scale says otherwise. The narrow front tire and refined rake give it freedom the Fat Boy can only pretend to have. It's still a heavy Harley, sure, but one that flows instead of fights. For men with aging backs or bad knees, that difference isn't subtle, it's salvation. Even those who don't care for flashy chrome admit the Breakout feels more alive through the bars. Same DNA, different design. That single shift in geometry proves something important. The Fat Boy's stubbornness isn't destiny, it's choice. Harley built it to look strong, even if it meant sacrificing how it moves. The Breakout exposes that decision. It's not about what Harley can't do, it's about what they chose not to fix. That realization lands hard for riders who grew up believing the company built bikes for riders first, not showroom photos, and when a choice costs comfort, riders notice in their wallets. Pride and the price tag. The Fat Boy doesn't come cheap, and Harley knows it. It's priced like a trophy, one meant to shine under garage lights as much as it roars on the street. But after the first few rides, many owners start adjusting it. They swap handlebars for reach, seats for comfort, and tires for stability. By the time the upgrades end, thousands more have been spent trying to make the bike ride the way it should have from the start. For men who've worked every hour to afford their machine, that stings. Paying premium money for a bike that demands more investment just to feel right feels like a quiet insult. Harley used to build machines that fit riders straight off the lot. The Fat Boy feels like a reminder that comfort now costs extra. Every modification feels like an apology the company never said out loud. Some riders accept it as part of the game, customizing instead of correcting. Others call it what it is, fixing a mistake that should never have existed. Either way, the numbers add up fast. Chrome grips, better suspension, wider seats, upgraded brakes. It all turns a $20,000 bike into a $27,000 compromise. For the loyal crowd that measures value in miles, not mirrors, that's a bitter pill to swallow. And the body pays a bigger price than the bank account. If you've made it this far, you're one of the riders who still cares about the truth behind the chrome. Subscribe to Motorcycle Heads right now, because the next story hits even harder and you'll want to hear it first. The wear down. Every bike has a rhythm. Some flow with you, others make you work for every mile. The Fat Boy belongs to the second group. After an hour in the saddle, fatigue sneaks in. The forward pegs stretch your hips, the low bars pull at your shoulders, and the seat angle presses your spine in ways only older riders understand. You roll off the highway at the first fuel stop and realize your body's already asking for mercy. It's not that the bike is painful, it's cumulative. Each mile chips away at comfort until your focus narrows from the road to the next rest break. Crosswinds catch the solid wheels, jolting your balance. Potholes hit harder than they should because the suspension was tuned more for stance than absorption. Even your vision of the road changes as fatigue sets in. Lines blur and reaction time lags. You know that kind of ride, the one you feel 2 days later. The aches aren't dramatic, they're quiet reminders that enjoyment shouldn't hurt. For many riders, that's when affection fades. Some sell within a season, not out of anger but exhaustion. They love the idea of the Fat Boy, but not the reality of living with it. Harley sells heritage, but comfort sells miles. And when the body starts protesting before the spirit does, even the most loyal rider has to decide what freedom really feels like. Dealers have started noticing that pattern too. The showroom echo walk into almost any Harley dealership today, and the story repeats itself. The Fat Boy stands on the floor, shining under perfect light, its chrome polished like a trophy. Salesmen still call it the legend, and brochures still use words like icon and timeless. But when you watch closely, something's missing. People stop to look, maybe take a photo, then move on to other models. The sparkle gets attention, but not commitment. Dealers quietly admit what the numbers already show. The Fat Boy sits longer than it used to. Trade-ins come back cleaner than expected. Barely ridden, well kept, but replaced. Owners buy it for the image, not the miles. Many say the same thing when they trade it back. It just wasn't for me. And these aren't new riders. These are veterans who once loved the name. The resale market reflects the same story. Used Fat Boys are easy to find and hard to move. The value drops faster than comparable Softails, not because of poor quality, but because the demand fades after the first thrill. It's a bike that sells on name alone, not repeat buyers. Harley's own brand gravity keeps it alive, even as loyalty quietly drifts elsewhere. The echo of past glory fills the room, but it's thinner now, almost hollow. And while Harley struggles to move them, rivals are reading the room. Rivals move in competition, smells weakness like exhaust on cold air. Indian, Yamaha, and even Harley's own Softail stable have started circling the same territory once ruled by the Fat Boy. Each offers torque, stance, and that muscular silhouette, but with smarter balance and better control. The Indian Chief, for example, captures the same broad-shouldered confidence without punishing the rider's body. Yamaha's Bolt series gives younger riders the chrome and swagger without the strain. Even within Harley's walls, the irony is hard to ignore. Models like the Breakout and the Heritage Classic appeal to riders who still want Harley muscle but need real-world usability. These bikes don't carry the baggage of cinematic fame or mythic expectations. They're simply designed to ride, not to pose. And that difference matters more than ever. While Harley clings to nostalgia, its rivals adapt to physics. Indian widened its reach by tuning ergonomics around longer rides. Yamaha kept their cruisers affordable and predictable. They read the same market Harley once owned and built bikes for riders who value substance over silhouette. The Fat Boy's devotion to style gives every other manufacturer free ground to conquer. Riders who once bled Harley orange and black are starting to test other brands. Not out of betrayal, but fatigue. They still want thunder, but they want it without punishment. But this was never just about sales. It's about what real Harley even means anymore. The question of what's real. Every generation of Harley riders eventually argues about authenticity. The Fat Boy sits right at the heart of that debate. For old-school riders, it feels like the line where Harley stopped listening to the road and started listening to the boardroom. The company began selling image over instinct. To them, the Fat Boy isn't rebellion. It's corporate cosplay dressed in chrome. Younger riders see the Fat Boy differently. They didn't grow up with the same expectations. To them, its bold stance and sculpted lines are art. Harley as sculpture, rebellion as expression. Older riders see something else. A brand trading grit for gloss. Brother, you've seen this debate your whole life. Panhead versus shovelhead, carburetor versus injection, real pipes versus baffled pipes. Every generation swears it knows what's authentic, but the Fat Boy made that fight cultural. A mirror showing Harley caught between nostalgia and evolution, soul and survival, legend and marketing. This isn't just a fight about parts or power, it's a struggle over purpose. Because when riders can't agree on what real means anymore, even the legends start to lose their place. And when the dust settles, one truth remains. The verdict. The Fat Boy was never the villain. It's a casualty of Harley's evolution and of time. Riders don't hate it for what it is. They mourn it for what it replaced. When it first rolled out, it stood for raw Americana, torque, and confidence. Today, it represents the crossroads Harley can't seem to leave behind. It's the face of a company torn between keeping its heritage and chasing a new audience that may never understand what made the brand special in the first place. The Fat Boy became Harley's mirror, shiny, proud, but missing the pulse beneath. It's the symbol of a brand torn between soul and strategy, between chrome and connection. Every rider knows you can't fake feel. We chase that rumble under our boots, that pull in the chest, that mile of freedom Harley once built into steel, and hope one day they remember how to build it again. Until then, the Fat Boy stands as both warning and hope, a reminder that soul can't be stamped, painted, or marketed. It has to be felt. The Fat Boy isn't the villain, it's the warning. Proof that even legends can lose their way when the boardroom forgets the back road. Harley built it to look strong, but somewhere along the line they stopped listening to the riders who made them great. Maybe one day they'll find that soul again. Until then, keep the chrome real and the miles honest. If you've ever owned a Fat Boy or swore you never would, drop your story in the comments. Hit that like if you ride for truth, not hype, and subscribe for more straight talk from the saddle.